Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the PASS Database Administration Virtual Group Chapter session in the Down Under time zone for the month of November. My name is Warwick Rudd, and I'll be hosting this session today. In this month's session, we've got Toyab Ali talking to us about Azure Automation, your SQL agent in the cloud. Now, I will hand over to Toyab in a couple of minutes' time. I do have some housekeeping to run through before the session starts, and then we'll be able to start with this session. So first off, just a big mention out to all of the PASS virtual groups that are available. If you're a member of any of these PASS virtual groups, you will already be getting the notifications like this chapter session on the great topics that are available across the board. If there are any in here that you feel might be of interest to you, feel free to go to the PASS website and register for those particular virtual chapters. I call out to some upcoming SQL Saturday events. We've got some in EMA, we've got some in LATAM, and we've got one coming up in Bangladesh, all for the month of November. If you're in those areas and you have not already registered, make sure that you register, go along to those events, and you'll get some fantastic days training. If you haven't already joined a local chapter, apart from this virtual chapter that you're a member of, feel free to look that up in your local area. Join those local chapters and you can take advantage of networking and learning from not only fantastic speakers, but also other like-minded people who are in the industry. If you are interested in volunteering, feel free to register that with your account with PASS, and you too could go in the running for the Outstanding Volunteer Award. Now, just as a reminder, this session is being recorded and will be made available on the PASS DBA website, probably within a couple of days of this session completing. This allows you to come back at any time to re-watch this session to pick up anything that you didn't pick up first time round. As you already know, PASS is a free membership that offers not just virtual chapter sessions, local chapter sessions, SQL Saturday events, the PASS Summit that has just been undertaken, as well as other sessions throughout the calendar year. A little bit about Toyab. I won't go through his bio. You'll be able to have a quick read of this now before I quickly hand over to Toyab, and he will be able to introduce himself for today's session. So with that, I'll hand over to Toyab.
Thank you, Warwick. Thank you for hosting and moderating this talk tonight. Do you see my screen right now?
We do see your slide deck, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, everybody. Good evening. It's 8:30 in the US, and some of you probably joined from different time zones, so good morning or good afternoon. My name is Toyab, and I will be talking about Azure Automation, your SQL agent in the cloud. What I mean by that, as of now, as we know that in Azure Cloud, once you spin up a SQL Server, there is no SQL Server agent. And as we all are familiar with SQL Server agent and what it does for us, so it became a challenge for many companies and many data professionals to move to cloud. Of course, they can always go and spin up a VM and install a SQL Server, but if somebody want to go as a PaaS model, not as an IaaS model, and what I mean by PaaS is a platform as a service, and then they don't get SQL agent. And Azure Automation lets you move or shift some of those SQL agent features using this tool, and that's why I picked this up. I think this is very relevant to a lot of data professionals who are currently looking at moving some of their on-prem databases and some of their ETL loads or other jobs to cloud. So before we go a little bit about myself, I'm working as a DBA for about 11 years. I have a MCSC in data management and analytics, and before I became a DBA, I worked in merchant marine for 10 years, and I also been to most of the continents and many countries. Beside work, I do long runs. I did a marathon 2 years ago, and I do a lot of half marathons during the whole year. And if I'm not doing DBA stuff or running, I have 3 kids, shuttling them around from events to events. And as a giving back to the community, because as I came from a different profession, I got a lot of help from the community, from the SQL Server community. So I'm always trying to give back whatever I can. So I'm a co-organizer of our local user group in New England, and I also speak in local user groups, SQL Saturdays, and virtual groups like this one. I do answer questions in SQL Help. If you're not using Twitter, this will be one of the reasons to use it. There's a hashtag called SQL Help. If you post a question, a lot of MVPs and very well-known data professionals will answer your question for free. I also answer question in DBA.Stack Exchange, because you can put your queries, you can put your query plan, and you can a little bit, put details about your problem. And people like, Brent Ozer and other folks will chime in and answer your question there. And I do blog at SQLWorldwide.com, and that's where I'm going to post the slide deck and also all the scripts that I'm going to use. Plus, I'm going to send this to Sharon, so she's going to post it in the DBA virtual group website probably in a day or two. So let's talk about our agenda. I briefly touched about why we'll be talking about Azure automation, and I'll give you an overview of the Azure automation. And Runbook is the heart at this Azure automation. So we'll spend a lot of time talking about Runbook. We'll author a Runbook. We'll schedule one, show you how to schedule it. We'll also run it on demand. So I'll be spending most of the time around Runbooks, and where we can use the Runbook and different kind of Runbooks. Also, I'll give you some resource where you can download already written Runbooks by Microsoft engineers and also by the community. And the Azure portal actually lets you download directly from this Runbook gallery to your portal. So that's a great feature. You even don't have to do copy paste. You can search it there and directly download, and then you can edit as you need. Or some of them are even ready to go. And we'll be switching to demo twice during the talk. So why Azure automation? As I just said, we are normally used to our enterprise data center, where we'll spec our hardware, software based on the forecasted growth of the company, probably for next, 2, 3, some companies will even do it for 5 years. But as we all know that the development cycle has been changing, it's a lot faster, it's more agile, and with even the DevOps model, the application lifecycle is changing. And we are moving to even internal cloud, and some of the companies like myself, I'm actively working on actually moving to external cloud. And that's one of the reasons that we need to focus into automation, because we cannot be doing things the way we were doing. We cannot be requesting for a machine and then spec it and then order it. People are going to put the code, you go through the code, select a vendor, they will ship it, then plug it into the data center. Those days are probably coming to an end. And now developers, they are in a 2-week development cycle. They need a test machine, they want to spin it up within a couple of minutes, they want to do their work, they're done their test, and they want to shut it down so we don't incur the cost. So all of this demanded this, we get, more, look at more automation, and we should be able to do it from the portal. And and just Azure itself is not enough, because there are many companies, and I think most companies are currently in a hybrid situation. So they still have their on-prem resource, and some of their resources are shifted to the cloud. And even when we talk about the cloud, it's not just Azure. Some companies will go to AWS, some of them will go to Google Cloud, and there are other clouds. So you need to come up with automation that you can integrate between all these systems. So integration is a core part for many people. So they need one platform that they can manage across the board. They're on-prem, internal cloud, external cloud, different vendors. And that's where Azure automation comes into play. And we also need to optimize. So when I say optimize, what I mean by that is it has to be easy. And most automation people will work on using PowerShell. And as we know, most of the new technologies nowadays will come with a PowerShell module. And if there is not one, if it's a REST-based, if there's a REST API, you can always come up with your own PowerShell module. So if you already written your scripts, if you're already doing automation with PowerShell on-prem using your SQL Server agent, wrapping your PowerShell script and running it as a SQL command, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You can take your scripts, go to Azure Cloud, and then using Azure Automation, you can reuse all of your scripts. And Microsoft determined that PowerShell will be the one platform that will be seamless across different technology. That will be the best tool to use to write your runbooks. And as I said, we also need to extend. So if currently there is some technology that doesn't have a PowerShell module, we can definitely extend it by writing a module. And if it's a REST-based application, we can do that. We also need to be efficient in orchestration. So one good thing is Azure automation was actually, most of the engineers that at Microsoft, they actually came from System Center. They wrote System Center orchestration. So if you are familiar with your DevOps team or your sysadmin team, if they're already using System Center, and in some shops, of course, DB is used to monitor SQL Server. If you are used to orchestrating in System Center, you will see that lot of familiarity or a lot of similarity in the Azure automation too. And with automation, it comes with a lower cost, right? Because if we write something, we automate, we free up our time. We can do the same thing. We just, as a click of a button, or we can schedule it. It's going to do its work by itself. And then we don't need to spend the time there. We can spend time in some development or some work that's more important. Just to give you an example, right? Before, if somebody asks for SQL Server, they need you order a machine, or you ask the sysadmins to spin up a VM, or you spin up a VM, then you have to install SQL Server. And that takes some time. Then you configure it, put all your accounts, and configure your max stop, configure your memory and all that. And now everything goes away. As a click of a button, you can spin up a SQL Server, and you can do it through your Runbook. And you can also have a schedule that scale it up, and we'll look at some of these and scale it down or shut it down in the evening when I don't need it, and I can save some of the cost. So let's look at some of the components of Azure Automation. So Azure Automation actually it's a software by itself, and Microsoft provide this as a software as a service, but there is also a component that come with as a platform as a service, and I'll talk about this later on. So it's a combination of both, and it's scalable. It's a multi-tenant environment, and its configuration is pretty easy. You really, there's not much to configure if you are just doing the Azure part, but if you want to use the runbooks, or if you want to use the Azure automation to also manage your resources on-prem, then there is a bit of configuration. So we are not going to talk about those today. We are just going to limit this talking about managing resources within Azure Cloud. but I will show you a diagram that which part you need to really dive in and master if you want to manage resources on-prem. So I talked about that, and so Runbook editor, which we'll see in our first demo. So within the Runbook editor, when you go to the portal, we'll see it from one place. You should be able to edit your runbook or author your runbook. You should be able to test, publish, and you will be able to schedule your jobs. And as I said before, you will be able to download runbooks from gallery, all from one place. So it really made the administration very easy. You don't have to go to multiple places from one portal. From one page, you should be able to do all this. And in the editor, we'll see, there are different ways you can create runbooks, and there are different kind of runbooks which we'll talk as we go. And these are some of the resources. So we talked about runbook, jobs, schedule, and webhooks is something that I'm not going to show you today, but just so you know, and webhook is just a HTTP call. So you can embed in your application a HTTP link, and which will create the link and call the runbook directly from your application. So you can do that. So it's not just from the portal. You can also call it from within your application. And when I talk about assets, and I'll show you this when we go to the portal, assets are something that you can create one time, you can save it, and you can use these assets across all your runbooks. And some of the examples of assets are your certificates. You can define variables, and you can define credentials and connections, and you should be able to use it for all your runbooks. You created one, save it in the portal, and then it's usable globally for all your runbooks. And I touched briefly that as a target, we can target our Azure resources, other cloud service, and also our on-prem resources. So let's look at a diagram, and I'll try to zoom this. Okay, so my zoom is not working on that one. Okay, so as you see here, this part is in Azure, this part is in cloud, and this is your on-prem. Now, we have our runbooks in Azure in the cloud. We can manage the Azure resources by running this runbooks, or we can schedule this. And we can start a runbook from Azure portal. We can use a webhook. We can also call PowerShell functions, and we should be able to run these runbooks and manage these resources. Now, if we want to manage some of our local resources in our own data center, then we have to run these runbooks from machines, from hosts within our data center. And there are agents that we'll have to install, and they call this hybrid runbook worker group. You have to install this, set this up one time, and then what it does, it brings these runbooks on-prem and target your local resources. And there is another way, like I was telling you before, we can also manage third-party resources, like external, like other clouds other than Azure. So our talk and demos will be within this zone today. I'm not going to talk about this, but just so you know that this Azure automation can also manage resources outside Azure cloud. And of course, the question will come, how much is this going to cost us? Because Azure model, pretty much every service, comes with a cost. And one good thing is for the first 500 minutes of runtime of all your jobs together is free for us. So 500 minutes is a pretty big time for us to, write some runbooks, spin up some resources, and play with it and get familiar with that. And even later on, if you run out of this, you can always, have your MSDN, your company MSDN account. You get from $50 to $150 per month for free. And there are other avenues that you can explore to get some free accounts. In my blog, I have a post about how you can get free credit from Microsoft to play with Azure, so you can look at that. There's no upfront cost, there's no termination fees, and pay only for what you use. And billing is based on the number of job and the runtime minutes. And a rule of thumb, normally in US currency, it's about 2 cents per minute for your runtime per jobs. So whatever minutes you consume, it's pretty much 2 cents per minute. And another thing you want to know is Azure Automation is not available in every data center, and even within the region, there are only certain data centers have this service available. So I just put a picture here just to show you the United States and Canada. As you can see, in the US, only 3 data centers currently support this, not the other ones. And I also put a link in the resource page that will give you the availability in other regions. Or do you have any question at this time before I go to a short demo?
Okay, so we do have one.
Sure.
Can you use a runbook to turn a IaaS VM on and off on a schedule? I have a need to give some users the ability to shut down and start their VM on a random schedule. What is the best way to do that without giving them full access to the portal?
Yes. So I think that question will be answered in the demo. I do have a VM stood up, and I will actually start it, but I haven't scheduled it. I think once you see that demo, that will answer your question. But to give a yes/no answer, yes, that is possible. That is possible.
All right, excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I am right now in my portal. I'm first going to give you a quick demo, then we'll go back to slide and come back at the end. I did prepare a couple of runbooks for you to see and just to have some idea. But before we do any of that, I will do it from scratch, just write a like a hello world kind of demo, just so you get familiar with all the components of this Azure automation. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to new. Some of this I will use later on, that's why I'm not talking about this. This is just a dashboard that I can drag drop different stuff that I use frequently. So we'll go here first. We say we will create a Azure automation account. So we give it a name. And I'm going to create a new resource group. I always do that, so at the end when you are done, you can just get rid of the resource group, so you don't have to remove all the resources one by one. And we are in East US 2, just going to say create. So what happened behind the scene is this account will also create 2 other accounts, and they are a AD account within the Azure Active Directory, And behind the scene, what will happen, as you can see here, is creating a classic runners account and Azure runners account, and we'll look at those. And those two accounts by default will go to your all resource group and give it a role-based permission for control. So if you are within your same subscription, this account will automatically get access to all the resources to control. And so if we go here right now, okay. It created this two account, and as you see here, it's a service principal. So it's an account within the Azure AD. And now we're going to create a runbook. And some of these are like tutorial, they get created automatic, but you can open and take a look at those. So I typed in some code just to save us some time. And I'll talk about the runbook type later on. So right now we're going to use a PowerShell one. So from the same place, you can go to edit. So this gives you to authoring your runbook. And what I did here, as you can see, is very simple. It's just, I'll talk about workflow later on. It just has a parameter, and I say it's not mandatory. It's name, world, and then I write output, hello name. And you can see here, so I can either publish it, I can save it, not publish it, or I can even test it from here. So before you publish it, you can test it from this console. And now if I say start, it's queued. And the next is going to go to run phase. And then you should see our output. This is starting now. And it's completed. So if we cannot go to this. So this time we did not give any parameter because it says it's false. Now let's publish this. And if we start this, we should be able to see the output. Okay, so I'm going to, I'm not sure, it should show that output even without without putting the parameter. By default, it should give us this default one. I'm not sure why it's not, but let's move on. So I'm just going to leave it right here. We'll go back to the slides, and we'll come back to some other demos. So we looked at a runbook. So a runbook is, as I said, this is the core component of Azure automation. And in a runbook, we can put just a single task, or we can also put a complex task, and we can also have runbooks calling other runbooks. So I can have a lot of small runbooks just with one step, and then I can have a master runbook that will call all other runbooks. And you can put all kind of conditions. You can orchestrate a total workflow from end to end using a runbook. And I think we talked about it that it's a service, but all this your runbooks are running on virtual machines, and those virtual machines are provided by Azure Cloud, and they are running as a platform as a service. As infrastructure as a service. So they're running their VMs in their data center, and you can also scale out, and they also have redundancy built in. So if your some of the VMs go down, automatically it will be taken over by other VMs. So if you schedule your jobs, you are not depending on any hardware. It's automatically redundant. And as I said, it can run a single process, or you can have a complex end-to-end process being taken care by the runbook. And we talked about this, that we can manage single resource, multiple resource, on-prem, and other cloud service too. So types of runbook. As of today, there are 6 types of runbook that's available in Azure portal. You can use graphical runbooks. So there are libraries, there are built-in functions. You can just drag and drop, and then you can configure the variables. And its look and feel is pretty much like a SSIS. So you can connect different nodes together. You can have conditions, and then you can have it branched out depending on which conditions satisfy, and then your workflow is going to follow that flow. And you can use the PowerShell using the UI. You can also do a PowerShell workflow, and I will talk about the difference between the PowerShell script and PowerShell workflow in a bit. So, and you can also have just PowerShell script. There are 2 different kinds. Again, one is a pure PowerShell script. The other one is text using PowerShell workflow. And there are 2 other. You can have a Python runbook, and you can also have a text based on Bash. So if you look at the first 2 towers that I mentioned, that we have PowerShell and PowerShell workflow. So there's a difference between these 2. So PowerShell workflow is PowerShell scripts with some additional runtime feature, and it also comes with few restrictions. And PowerShell script, in a PowerShell workflow, the script really doesn't transfer 100% to PowerShell. Behind the scene, your PowerShell code get compiled into XAML. It's XAML, Extensive Application Markup Language. And under the hood, it's really not a pure PowerShell script. And when you create a workflow, there are a couple of advantages it comes with, especially when you in runtime. So if you have an error, you can start it from there. You don't have to start your workflow from the beginning. Whereas in a PowerShell script, if it fails in between, it doesn't retain that state. You have to start from the beginning. On a PowerShell workflow, you can manually suspend in the middle, and you can resume your workflow from where you stopped it. And there is also a slight syntactical difference between PowerShell and PowerShell workflow. So in the resource page, I actually gave a link. It's a huge PDF of about 400 pages. It has everything that you will ever probably need to know. So use of Runbook, I'm not going to list everything because there are probably, few thousand use cases that we can use Runbook as of now. But just so we can relate as a, as a SQL Server data professional, that what we can use as our Runbook as. So I put some just, very basic examples. Sometimes you do purge old data based on certain criteria, based on ID, based on date time. So you can put that or convert it to a runbook. Update statistics, index maintenance, and you can also respond to incident. So you can, if you use like PowerShell workflow, or you can have alerts or certain thresholds within your SQL Server. If they exceed, you can send notifications, like as we can do it today from SQL Server Agent Alert or from a SQL Server Agent job. Within Azure SQL Database, you can vertically scale up or scale down. So if your workload, that your busy time, for example, is 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., you can have a scheduled runbook that will, like before 8 a.m., it will scale up your database, and after 5 p.m., it will scale down, so you can save your money. Somebody asked about the VM. You can do the same thing. You can have a schedule, or you can do it on demand. Start your VM, stop your VM. You can have one PowerShell, one runbook that will shut down all your VM in a resource group, that will start all your VM in a resource group. So if you have dev team across the globe in different time zone, you can plan those, depending on when they come on board and when they go, when they sign off. So you can save money there. You can have disaster recovery scripts written down, practice. So if you have an event, you can trigger those manually, or some other event will trigger those and move your workload, or change your application connection string to a different data center. Virtual machines, we talked about, start, stop a VM. You can back up your Azure VM. You can back up your workload. You can even schedule your patch and your updates using Runbook. So I talked about Runbook Gallery briefly. So I'll show that when you go back to the portal. You can you can get Runbooks from Gallery. You can also get modules. So PowerShell module, some of those will come for free, like Azure RM module. But if you need other modules to write your runbook, you can always import them from PowerShell Gallery directly, and they are saved in your storage account. So you have to first open a storage account if you want to get external modules for PowerShell. And as I said, you can directly import. And one disclaimer, I put this here because I'm talking about these portals that you can download from the gallery in the portal. That anytime you download anything, you should definitely look at the code, read the code, read the comments, edit where you need, and test it before you put it in production environment. Don't just download anything from the gallery and just deploy it in your production environment. So we have about 20 minutes left. I think this is good enough. We'll rest of the period we'll spend in the demo, and I'll come back and show you some of the resources available for you to look at later on. Warwick, do you have any questions at this time?
Okay, we've got one extra one. If there is no Azure automation available where I've hosted my SQL Azure, what are the options to run something on my Azure DB?
So if I understood the question, without using Azure automation, you want to run something against your Azure SQL database.
So if I've created my Azure SQL database in a region that does not have Azure automation, what options do I have?
So you can go across the region. So I will. So when you let me show this. Okay, I got the question. So I'll. So if you see this automation account, and let me go back here actually. So you can take this application ID and you can copy this, go to your resource group in a different data center and give it a, yes?
We're just looking at your laptop screen.
Okay, sorry. I thought I did that. Okay, can you see that now?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the properties of my Run As account. You can take this application ID, and this is your AD account. This has all the details of the account. You can take it to your resource group in a different data center, and give this account a control privilege on your resource group. Then you should be able to use your Runbook to your other data center and to the other resource groups. Does that? I hope that will answer your question.
Excellent, thank you.
Yep. So let's go back. So I'm not going to use this anymore because I already, have another account and I have a couple of Runbooks. And before we go there, I want to show you that I also have a SQL Server. I have an Azure SQL Server right here. And if we go to my dashboard, you can see that it's right here. It's a SQL Server. I have nothing here. There's no database. I just have the system database. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a database and keep a note that I am using the basic edition. And in basic edition, there is no tier. So the service objective is also basic. Later on, I'm going to use this database to show you a runbook that I can scale up if I want to, and also a couple of other things using this database. So in the, let it get created. So what I'm doing here, just to start from a very basic, I know you'll never write a runbook for this, what I'm doing here, but just to give you a flavor that you can, do pretty much anything you do with T-SQL, you can embed this in a runbook and you can do that. So I'm going to create a table, just customer name, full name, email, phone, and I'm going to just insert 10 records and in that table. And once I do that, what I'm going to do is I have a runbook here. Okay, so the database is created. We can come here and see that. So we have a test runbook DB. We don't have anything else. I'm going to switch the context. In Azure, you cannot say use DB yet. I don't know why. So you always have to make sure you're in the right context of the database. So I'm just going to create this table and insert 10 rows. Yeah. And let me show you the code here. And this is actually from the gallery. So, I even did not change this, just so you know that I did not write this. This was downloaded from there. And I just filled up my, some of the variable values. So with anything first, with SQL Server, I have to give it a credential, right? So I have to tell this Runbook somehow how to get into the SQL Server, because here what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to count the number of rows in that table. If I was scaling up or down, I really wouldn't need a SQL Server connection. So first I get the connection, then I get the username, password, and then if you see here, it's just a simple select count from my table, and I'm passing the connection. So here you can pretty much replace this with any T-SQL you want, and you should be able to do a lot of stuff just following this format. And if you see here, I pass SQL Server connection as a credential. So I'm going to show you where this is coming from. And I can use this across the board. So this is a global asset. This has my username and my password. And if we come here, we'll see that we have a login with that same name. So I'm going to run this, and then we'll come back and look at the output. It should just simply tell us that we have 10 rows in that table. So let it run. We'll come back. So next, I'll leave this table. As you can see, we'll go back and look at the result. Just for the interest of time, I'm going to set up for the next demo. As you can see, this is the test runbook table. So next, what I did is I'm going to show you an index maintenance demo. So I'm creating a table, test rebuild, cluster index, inserting 1,000 rows. Then we'll check the fragmentation of that index. And we can go back to the portal. Okay, so I have to give it some of the parameters. If we are scheduling it, we'll fill this up, and then we'll schedule it so we don't have to enter it every time. Since these are mandatory, every time I run this, I have to fill it up. But if I'm in a test page, it will retain these values. And this is our table name, and this is my credential. And that's it. It should run by itself. So let's look at this. I know I'm switching around just so you guys who are in Far East, you guys can go back to your work or your lunch. So it's 3.3%. I'm going to update this just to make it worst purposely, just for demo purpose. And now, as you can see, it's 43%. I don't know if you can, yeah, you can see that. So the fragmentation is now 43%. So I have a runbook. Okay, this job is still running. It completed. Let's look at the output. So it says 10. I don't know if you guys can see. So we have 10 records. So you're done with that one. I know nobody's going to write a runbook, but I just want to give you from a very basic one to build up. So the next one, we're going to do a update SQL index. And this one, if you see the symbol here is a little bit different. It's a little bit gray. And if we open this, you will see this is a PowerShell workflow runbook. It also gives you a little bit more details, what account you're using, what location, your resource group, and all that. So let's look at the code here. So I kept all the comments as is, and again I downloaded this from System Center Automation team. Somebody wrote it in 2014. I just changed a little bit for what I needed to show you. So here I'm passing all the SQL Server name, database credential, and I'm saying if it's more than 20%, then do it. Rebuild offline is false, means I want to rebuild online. I'm giving a table name here, and it's false. If you don't pass it, it's going to look for all your tables, and then if it's over 20% fragmented, it's going to go one by one and rebuild it. And in this case, again, I have to first look at my credentials, make sure I can get in. It's running this T-SQL statement to look at the fragmentation and then save those result set. Then one by one, it's going to go and go through and rebuild all those indexes. So that's what it's pretty much doing. So I'm going to revert to published. Yes. And we'll just start this. And I believe for this one, I don't need, yeah. So because this is a workflow, it will automatically, even though I'm not scheduling it, it will get all the values from the default. So I really don't have to do anything here. I'm just going to let it run. And I'll bring up the output. We should be able to see this. So when this is done, I will run this query again and check the fragmentation, that if it got fixed. Okay. So the next demo, I also have a demo to slide to increase the size of this database. But before I do that, somebody asked a question about the VM, so I want to show that one before we do that, because we have seen few of the demos against the SQL Server. So if you see here, I have a VM. And I did not install anything in this. I just spin up a VM just for this demo. And you can see that this is in a stop state. And actually, I also wrote a quick PowerShell here, so it's easier for us to see the state of the VM. It's deallocated. Now, I'm going to show you a runbook that will start this VM, and you can, of course, always schedule it, or people can run this on demand. And this one is a graphical runbook. And the PDF that I will refer to in the resource page, there is a step-by-step instruction how you can, it actually go beyond what I'm going to show you. So because I'm not putting any fork in my runbook, but if you follow that, that's like, it goes into more details. So the first three part is pretty much looking at my subscription ID, and then looking at my Azure account, and then logging into my Azure, into my account, using the same subscription and using the account, and then starting this VM. So that's pretty much the workflow here. So I'm going to go to revert to published, and we'll start this. And I have to give my VM name, And I also have to give the resource group name because I can have multiple resource group within the subscription. So it needs to go and look at the, or I can have the same VM with the same name in two different resource groups. So it will first look up the resource group, and then it will find that VM and then start it. Okay. So that job finished, and as you can see, the fragmentation came down to 0.7%. And we should also be able to look at the details of that job if we go there. So this gives you all the step-by-step, it looked at the object ID, and then it found the fragmentation was 43+%, and a table to index, and then it has all the steps that it logged here, and the progress report also. So the VM is going to start, but there's one last runbook that I want to show you. And before I do that, I just want to show you one thing, that our SQL Server database that I was showing you demo, if you can see here that we have a basic tier right now. And I have a runbook that tells that between this time and this time, I want to bring up this database to a different tier. And you can have all kind of a schedule for different time zone. You can have a start and end. I mean, whatever is you need. And you can schedule this job to run every hour. It will go and check if it's, let me open this for you. So if your database is already in that tier, it's not going to do anything. And if it is on a different tier, it's going to scale it down or scale it up. So again, this was written by MVP from Netherlands, Jor Klein, and he recently updated this. So I left everything there. So it was not written by me. Again, these are all the parameters. And the meat of this is you can do a scaling schedule. I'll show you. And it's also in the comment section. You can see, weekdays. I believe 0 is a Sunday and 1 is a Monday. Start time, stop time. You can say what edition you want, and then you can have multiple schedule. This is like it's a JSON format, so you can have a array of schedules, and you can have a comma in between, and you can have different days, different start, stop, and different tiers. And I'm not going to go through this, but what it basically does, it look at the date and time, look at the schedule, and then it look at what is the current tier of that of the database. If it says, okay, you are in the right tier, I'm not going to do anything. If you are not, then I'm going to put you in the right tier. That's what it pretty much does. So we know we are in basic. So I'm going to run this, and the way I scheduled it, that it should bump it up to a standard. And our database name is the one we just created. I'm going to try to type a schedule here. And there's a function, it's in the comment section. You can look up all the time zones that Azure use. Sometimes it's not obvious. You want to make sure that you're using the same verbiage that they use. So. And our default will be standard. So it should scale up. And while it's doing that, let's go and check if that VM got started. Why do you sign me out? Yeah, the VM is running, as you can see here. And if you go to the portal, you should be able to see the same. Yeah, the VM is running. So that graphical runbook, that started the VM. So I'm not going to, we are just over a few minutes. I'm not going to wait for that sliding up. But what it will basically do, it will put it in a standard size from the basic. So let's go back to the slide. So these are a couple of resources that I put, and the slide deck you're going to get, they will have links. I'm not showing it here. There's a pluralsight course, and the PDF book is over 400 page. Pretty much, goes from 0 to as much as you want. Here are some of my contacts. If you want to send some questions that you didn't ask right now, or you didn't get time, or if you have other questions, you can send it to me, and I'll try to respond as fast as I can. And thank you for attending. I know some of you have to go for lunch, so I'll hang out. If anybody has questions, I can answer those at this point.
So, Toya,
yes.
To get the concept right, can we consider a runbook as a SQL agent job? Also, is it possible to have multiple jobs in the runbook?
Yes. So normally experts suggest, instead of putting everything in one runbook, say like in SQL Server Agent, we have job steps, right? We always try to break it up into different job steps, and then we have conditions, right? If this one succeed, you go there. If this one fail, jump to that one, or just totally exit. Ideal will be not to jam too many things in one runbook, have multiple runbooks, and then have a master runbook, and you can call, and you can have conditions there. That, okay, if this one succeeds, go to number 3 runbook, or call that runbook. If this one fails, call that runbook, and that runbook can alert you. But to answer your question, what you asked me at the beginning, yes, we can, from our DBA perspective, we can look at it as a SQL Server Agent job. I would agree to that.
Okay. Now, how do we search the runbook in Gallery? I'm not quite understanding.
Sure. So just give me a minute. Are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure. Do you see this button? I don't know if I should zoom it. Let me zoom it for browse gallery.
Mm-hmm.
So if I click here, and now I can now I have option, right? What kind of runbook I'm looking for. So I'm just looking for a PowerShell script by Microsoft, or I don't like Microsoft, I just want the community one, or I love Microsoft, don't like the community. I have all this choice. So once I do that, now it gives me a search. So I know there was a question about virtual machine. Maybe start. Okay, so maybe look for. Okay, schedule virtual machine shutdown startup. And now if I like this one, I can click here and import it directly. Does that answer the question?
I would assume it does, but we'll.
Yep. Okay.
All right. If there's no other questions, I'd like to thank Toyab. I'd like to thank everybody for coming along and being part of this month's session. As has been previously mentioned, this session is being recorded and will be available. Feel free to reach out to Toyab with his credential or contact details that have been provided if you've got any other further questions. If not, I wish everybody a fantastic day. Thank you, Toyab, and I look forward to seeing you all next time we host this session in this time zone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.